When the weapons of mass destruction thing turned out not to be true, I expected the American people to rise up. Well, they didn't. Then, when the Abu Ghraib torture thing surfaced, and it was revealed that our government participated in rendition, a practice where we kidnap people and turn them over to regimes who specialize in torture, I was sure then the American people would be heard from. We stood mute. Then came the news that we jailed thousands of so-called terrorist suspects, locked them up without the right to a trial or even the right to confront their accusers. Certainly, we would never stand for that. We did. And now it's been discovered the executive branch has been conducting massive illegal domestic surveillance on its own citizens, you and me. And I at least consoled myself that finally, the American people will have had enough. Evidently, we haven't. In fact, if the people of this country have spoken the messages, we're okay with it all. Torture, warrantless search and seizures, illegal wiretappings, prison without a fair trial, or any trial, war on false pretenses. We as a citizenry are apparently not offended.
From the Palace at Uncle's Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for all your workers' compensation, employment, and labor law matters. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about work comp matters. Thanks for being part of the show, and if you can break away from your work comp matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. You can send a fax to 818-475-1437. You can even send us an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. With me in studio, my right-hand man, Mike Zyma, the best-dressed man in California workers' compensation, Ted Durden, my protege, attorney Robert Ozeron, Scott's on the board, John Scalia's in Munich, Germany, and back at Work Comp Central, making sure the whole damn thing goes right, is Jake Paris. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. As always, we're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the number one computer management system used by more California workers' compensation attorneys than any other computer management system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, $1 a day, A1 Law. And if you want those hard-to-get, sold-out concerts, sports, theater tickets, give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. Before we get to tonight's show, I have some very unfortunate news. It was I just found out that the Honorable Judge Barry Goldman passed away peacefully at home under hospice care after a long illness. I knew Judge Goldman for many years. He was there when I first started in workers' comp over 25 years ago, and I believe he retired about 7-8 years ago. He went to law school at night. He graduated from the San Fernando Valley College of Law, now Laverne. He was admitted to the state bar as an attorney in June 1970. He did personal injury and work comp work, and then became a staff trial attorney for the State Compensation Insurance Fund. In 1989, he became a workers' compensation judge and remained in that position in Van Nuys until he retired in 2010. All of us at Work Comp Matters send our condolences and best wishes to the family and friends of the Honorable Judge Barry R. Goldman. We've got Ted coming up with the Autonomous Car Report. Robert has the Work On Matters Financial Report. John Scalia has the National Report. I've got the Marijuana Report. And, of course, that old standard, Where's Anna? But tonight's show, is on the memo, the Nunes memo, the GOP memo, certainly, the FISA memo. The United States Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, also known as FISA, is a United States federal court established and authorized under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978 to oversee requests for surveillance, warrants against foreign spies inside the United States by federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Such requests are made most often by the National Security Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Congress created FISA and its court as a result of the recommendations by the United States Senate Church Committee. In 2013, the New York Times said it had quietly become almost a parallel Supreme Court. From its opening in 1978 until 2009, the court was housed on the 6th floor of the Robert F. Kennedy Department of Justice building. Since 2009, the court has been relocated to the E. Barrett Prettyman United States Courthouse in Washington, D.C. In 2013, a top-secret order issued by the court, which was later leaked to the media from documents culled by Edward Snowden, required a subsidiary of the Verizon to provide a daily, ongoing feed of all call detail records, including those for domestic calls to the NSA. I'm not sure how everybody feels about the FISA court. We'll get to everybody else's opinion and John's opinion first in a little bit. This, in my opinion, is totally outrageous, but it's been going on since its inception 40 years ago. I mean, John Lennon claimed he had an FBI file on him. Many innocent people that have never done anything wrong have had files, and in my mind, unreasonable search and seizure. And what we have here now is essentially that when it came to politics, the Democrats got caught. And, well, Mike, what do they say in baseball? It isn't cheating until you get caught?
I
Something like that.
Some juicers say that.
Yeah.
I think Al Bundy used to say that. Married with Children.
Well, if Al Bundy said it, it must be true. So, without going into a huge amount of detail, because I believe the people around this table and also John are going to do it, I'm just going to say that, in my opinion, what do they also say? That the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich if that's what the district attorney wants. They've said that the warrants that have been issued by the secret court, 99% of them have been approved. Only 1% have been denied. We've got a news story on this issue. But right now, talking about the FISA court and the FISA memos, he's still a licensed attorney after 45 years. He's still got his bar card, but he's hanging out in Munich, Germany. Actually, I think he's in the Swiss Alps or something tonight. But as usual, he was kind enough to contribute. Without further ado, here is attorney John Scalia.
Hi, this is John with the Work Comp Matters International Report from Munich. Well, actually, I'm in the Austrian Alps right now, so I apologize if the echo has returned to this particular podcast. There are two things that are topics of discussion all over America today. One is the Super Bowl, and the other is the memo. I obviously do not have to explain the Super Bowl. The memo, on the other hand, does require some explanation and some clarity. As we all know, the memo refers to the memorandum released by Devin Nunes, the Republican chair of the House Intelligence Committee, regarding a surveillance request by the Justice Department for surveillance on one person named Carter Page. The Trump administration has said that Carter Page was a nobody, so it's really unclear why anybody should actually care about this memo. However, in today's political environment, it's going to be made into a big deal and has been made into a big deal. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a surveillance request which was granted by the Foreign Secrets Intelligence Act court to surveil Carter Page. Now, that court essentially is modeled after a grand jury. If you go into Google and ask, what is a grand jury? Google says a grand jury is a panel of citizens convened by a court to decide whether it is appropriate to prosecute someone. Sounds like it's out there to protect you, doesn't it? Yeah, sounds good. The reality is, that's a joke. The reality is other. Back in the 50s, there was a reputed mobster named Frank Costello. The government was trying to convict him for tax evasion. And they had 3 investigators testify before the grand jury that Costello couldn't possibly be living the lifestyle he was living if he only made the income he said he made. Mind you, that was the only testimony in front of the grand jury. The investigators had no first-hand knowledge of anything. Nonetheless, prosecution was brought and he was convicted. Costello, who had enough money, legal or otherwise, to employ lawyers, took it all the way to the Supreme Court. And what did the Supreme Court say? Well, Justice Hugo Black, who is one of the most famous justices in American jurisprudence, wrote the following: neither the Fifth Amendment nor any other constitutional provision prescribes the kind of evidence upon which grand juries must act. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah, because what it says is, it doesn't matter. Grand juries can act on whatever they like. It doesn't matter if it's hearsay evidence or totally absurd. Grand juries can do what they want, and there's no constitutional protection given to you. Now, I have a personal axe to grind here because I have a letter from the National Security Agency telling me they're not going to give me my surveillance file. So I don't like surveillance, and I don't like government surveillance. But the reality is, this is normal. How normal is it? Well, the agency from which the court from which this surveillance request was approved had 35,000 requests. Yeah, 35,000. And guess how many of them they rejected? 12. That's right. You've got a greater chance of being hit by a meteorite on your morning jog than you have of getting a surveillance request rejected by the Foreign Security Intelligence Act court. So in other words, it was just business as normal. It's exactly what it was. Devin Nunes has never been to law school. Devin Nunes wouldn't know evidence if it hit him in the face, and even admitted that he hadn't read the transcript before the court. And of course, the other guy who has never been to law school and wouldn't know evidence if it hit him in the face declared that this clearly exonerates him. Well, as I've said before, and I make the offer to Devin Nunes and Trump, I will sign a release for all my academic transcripts if you guys sign one for yours. And I got my money on who's going to be laughed at. Anyway, it was just business as normal to issue this surveillance request, but it's been blown into the partisan political environment we have today. That's the view from the Austrian Alps this week. I'll be back in Munich next week.
Thanks for reminding me, John. By the way, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and of course, any of you listening last week, I picked the Eagles not only to beat the spread.
I picked it, and also close to the score. I want the record to reflect.
That's
very
right.
nice
yes.
pick. I had picked the Patriots. I was dead wrong.
I was just hopeful that the Eagles would win, and man, did they do it in grand style.
Nick Foles.
There you go. Mike is going to read our very first news story, and then we're going to have a musical break. Go ahead, Mike.
House Republicans have released a disputed intelligence memo that alleges the FBI and the Department of Justice abused their power, specifically regarding the surveillance of Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. The memo from the House Intelligence Committee's chairman, Devin Nunes, also claims that no surveillance warrant would have been issued without the opposition research dossier on Donald Trump written by ex-British intelligence officer Christopher Steele. The dossier, commissioned by Fusion GPS, was paid for by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign through law firm Perkins Coie. It also contains multiple unverified allegations about Trump's connections to Russia.
And in a related story, newly revealed text messages between FBI paramours Peter Strzok and Lisa Page include an exchange about preparing talking points for then FBI Director James Comey to give to President Obama, who wanted to know everything we're doing. The message from Page to Strzok was among thousands of texts between the lovers reviewed by Fox News. The pair both worked at one point for special counsel Robert Mueller's probe of alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. The newly uncovered texts revealed a bit more about the timing of the discovery of hundreds of thousands of emails on former Congressman Anthony Weiner's laptop, ultimately leading to Comey's infamous letter of Congress just days before the 2016 presidential election. On Election Day 2016, Strzok wrote, "OMG, this is effing terrifying." Page replied, "OMG, I'm so depressed." Later that month, on November 13, 2016, Page wrote, "I bought all the president's men. Figure I need to brush up on Watergate." And then she eventually sent a text saying, "Never text me again." We're going to be back with some more talk, news, water cooler talk, hopefully some answers, but it's time for a musical break on WorkCom Matters.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far? Far as the eye can see. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do.
Storms with Baby You're a Rich Man on WorkCom Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more California workers' compensation attorneys than any other system on the planet, give us a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached, money-back guaranteed, $1 a day A1 Law. And if you want those hard-to-get, even sold out, even front row concert, sports, or theater tickets, give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. So who's got a burning desire to talk about the memo and FISA and whether it's right or wrong to spy? And
I'd just like to say, at the very least, the FBI knowingly used Clinton opposition research to get and renew a FISA warrant. That's at the very least. At the very worst, I can only imagine, but somewhere in the middle, I think that the FBI used such opposition research that they knew could not be corroborated.
Well, here's my thinking on it. First of all, I think the first mistake that all this hullabaloo about the memo and what keeps getting lost and some of the cacophony is the fact that the investigation started with George Papadopoulos.
It's still ongoing, is my understanding.
Right. So the initial investigation didn't have anything to do with Carter. And then there's an interesting aside. They keep talking about they targeted Carter because they were going after the Trump campaign. When the investigation into Carter started, it was in October of 2016 when he wasn't even on the Trump campaign anymore. He wasn't.
And I also remember, wasn't it shortly after Trump became president in about March or something when he announced my phones are tapped and everybody thought he was full of Shiite?
Yeah, that's very, very true. But another interesting aside is that the information, the reason that they picked up on the Steele dossier is because he was British intelligence, and he had also trained a lot of people. He was involved in a lot of investigations that were valid. That's why he was given a lot of credence and credibility on that point. Now, when Carter testified before Congress, he confirmed that some of the information in the dossier was true. Now, there were a lot of salacious details, but I haven't heard anybody say that the salacious details weren't true. And as far as the warrants are concerned, the Republicans are all concerned about it. What's interesting is two of the judges that signed off on it were Republicans.
Yeah. I don't know the play-by-play regarding Carter Page and the investigation. I'm aware that he was being investigated before and after his time on the Trump campaign. More along the FISA discussion and the FISA warrant. And just for the listeners at home, what a FISA warrant is. A FISA warrant is a secret warrant. All right. In the United States, we have the Bill of Rights, and one of those rights is the unlawful search and seizure right. Right. The police cannot unconstitutionally search or seize your property. I think that's the Fourth Amendment. It's been a bit since law school, but I believe that's the fourth, right? So a FISA warrant is a secret warrant that is against the Bill of Rights and meant for a very special situation, a situation in which if the person who is the target of the warrant becomes aware of the warrant, there could be serious security issues. That's the point of a FISA warrant. It's made mostly for terrorism, right? You don't want somebody, and that's the point of the whole creation is. That's what we're talking about really and are alluding to. It's terrorism. It wasn't really originally intended, in my understanding, is to spy on fellow Americans. It was meant to spy on people generally who may be in America to commit terrorist activities.
Or to be double agents like the Russians.
Sure.
Go ahead.
But the point of a FISA warrant, and that's so controversial, is that it is a secret warrant. You don't need to tell the person that's the target of it. Now, to me, the amount of applications and the amount of approvals and the increasing amounts there, I don't necessarily jump to any conclusions about that. Because perhaps we have a better surveillance infrastructure and maybe there are more terrorists here now, or we're more aware of terrorism, or we have a broader definition of what it is requiring more warrants. I need to look at the specifics for something like that. But the fact that when a FISA warrant is applied for, that some government agent has what we would call Brady evidence in trial lawyer court, right? Exculpatory evidence or evidence that would diminish the credibility of the search warrant, such as the Steele dossier.
Right.
When there's evidence being withheld, purposefully and intentionally withheld from the court in order for the court to more likely grant the warrant because they know this looks bad for the warrant.
Was there something specific that you noted in that regard?
As far as the Steele dossier and all that, there's all sorts of documentaries now.
It was financed by the Clinton campaign.
You can get into all the details online about why they knew while they were acting on it that it was not a credible report.
You're talking about the FBI.
Correct.
Yeah, but the FISA court does not require all the evidence. I believe they only require what they refer to as the pertinent or material evidence.
That is very true. And also,
now, whether or not it was paid for by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee, whether or not that's material, we could probably talk about that all night.
Right, that's very true. But again, even as far as that is concerned, I think anybody with an iota of intelligence would know when the FISA warrants were applied for, and again, you're talking about people that were involved in Trump's campaign, it was going to be from anti-Trump people. I don't think that's a long leap to make. It's a very easy leap to make.
Yeah, but here you're taking something that's meant for terrorists in extreme situations, things that subvert the Bill of Rights. And here you are using it in a political game all of a sudden. That's like when Obama would turn the IRS against people, right? I mean, this type
Very
of
similar, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of a perversion of bureaucracy, and I can't believe it's the Democrats doing it this time. I guess maybe it'll be the Republicans tomorrow, or in the past it was the Republicans. It's all politics, it seems, generally, and I don't want to put everybody in the same boat like that. But there's always some sort of impropriety going on. But the perversion of the IRS, of the courts, the neutrality of the courts, if we don't have them, we have no faith in our justice system. And, everyone protesting on the streets is right.
And I agree with you. But the concern that I have is like what Steve said at the very beginning, that surveillance of American citizens has been going on for decades. It isn't anything new. My concern about, even beyond the content of the Nunes memo, is the fact that it's become a political tool to politicize an arm of the government that is entrusted to our security. You're trying to undermine those agencies, and that's not good on any level.
And adding to exactly what Ted said and combining with Robert about being perverted, I find the fact that when the Republicans initially intended to release the memo and the Democrats all came out and said, no, don't do that. You put our investigation at risk. You put lives at risk. You risk national security. Then the day after the memo comes out, all of the Democrats want their own memo to come out. What happened to confidentiality? What happened to national security? It's all perverted politics. Robert, if I'm not mistaken, you've got the next news story.
A federal judge yesterday granted a temporary restraining order barring Orange County Sheriff's deputies from arresting homeless people who refuse to leave encampments along the Santa Ana River. U.S. District Judge David Carter's order is related to a lawsuit filed January 29th seeking to halt an ongoing effort to clear homeless people who have set up camp along the river trail and prevent 3 cities, Anaheim, Costa Mesa, and Orange, from enforcing anti-camping, trespassing, and loitering laws. The police presence along the river's trail is still allowed, and deputies are permitted to make arrests for probation and parole violations or other illegal conduct.
Senate leaders announced a sweeping 2-year budget deal today that could end the shutdown threats and stopgap spending measures that have plagued the current fiscal year. But the bipartisan accord was rejected by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi unless Speaker Paul D. Ryan committed to bipartisan legislation to protect immigrant dreamers from deportation. The agreement would boost defense spending by $80 billion and non-defense accounts by $63 billion over strict budget caps imposed by an earlier budget deal, according to those familiar with the talks. Republicans have been pushing for the military increases, but the Democrats want parity for domestic programs. The package also includes nearly $100 billion in supplemental disaster aid, spending for for hurricanes and wildfires that ravage coastal and western states and Puerto Rico.
I think this is going to pass. It's going to go for the vote tomorrow. But I heard Nancy Pelosi was talking for 8 hours.
She was essentially
today.
Filibustering today, and I can't imagine that must be like medieval torture.
She doesn't like it because she's not happy with the number of 1.8 million immigrants being legalized. She wants more.
How did Nancy Pelosi get elected originally?
She's from San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. And she's the House Minority Leader. I'm overdue to come to the Bay Area, I will tell you. It's time for a musical break. You're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other computer management system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120. And if you want your money back, I messed up. If you want those hard-to-get, sold-out concert, sports, and theater tickets, give Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. I'll be back with the guys around the table from Uncle's studio after another musical break.
lost my soul, I can't get it back. I've fallen down on my lonely track. Something inside is dying to break free. I got chains from wings used to be. I long to break free from this lonesome jubilee. I feel so scarred, it's gone by this party's policy. Yeah. You know, if I could change my ways, baby, I would change today. I got chains, wings used to be. Going high up in the sky. Don't worry, my life ain't gonna pass me by. It's the end of the road, my lonely road of dreams untold. I got chains where wings used to be. And just the other night, you know, I found myself talking to Jesus. I whimpered, winding well, and I had changed. And he said, you're gonna ride for free as long as you stick with me. I've been down, but it don't bother me, no. You know I had me some chains where some wings used to be. And he told me just like this, you're going high up in the sky. Don't worry, your life ain't gonna pass you by. It was looking like the end of the road, the lonely road of dreams untold. You had chains, your wings used to be. Hang on now. You got high up in the sky. Don't worry, your life ain't gonna pass you by. It's the end of the road, your lonely road of dreams untold. You got chains where wings used to be. I don't mean to sound corrupt, but I've fallen, now I can't get up. I don't mean to sound depraved, not a straight line to my grave. Chains where wings used to be. I got chains where wings used to be. Something inside was dying to break free. I had chains where wings used to be. I learned you gotta keep changing. Take it from me.
The wonderful folk rock sounds of Susan Scheller on Work Comp Matters. And now it's time for the marijuana report. The city of San Francisco announced this week that it would wipe out or reduce the sentencing for all cannabis-related crime convictions, misdemeanors, and felonies dating back to 1975. This means thousands of people who are serving time or who have served time will have their cases reviewed and will have their paths cleared to either be released from jail or to pursue housing, jobs, and other life necessities that they've previously been barred from due to drug convictions. And also, in Sacramento, the city approved the creation of a Cannabis Opportunity Reinvestment and Equity Program. The criteria are similar to those of the equity programs in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Oakland, in that permits are set aside or prioritized for people who are living below the federal poverty levels and have been impacted by the drug war. My name is Steve Appel, and you've been listening to the Work Comp Matters Marijuana Report. And now, without further ado, it's time for the Work Comp Matters Financial Report. My protege, attorney Robert Ozeron.
Good evening, everyone. This is Attorney Robert Ozeron with the Workers' Comp Matter Financial Report for the week of February 7th, 2018. Almost half of about 4,000 businesses surveyed have suffered some sort of cyber attack in the past year, according to a report from Bermuda-based insurer and reinsurer Hiscox Limited. The drop in the stock price of Wynn Resorts Limited is the main reason why Steve Wynn has stepped down as the head of the company, following multiple reports over many decades that he subjected many female staff to unwanted sexual advances. U.S. regulators asked Congress to pass legislation to improve oversight of vital currencies like Bitcoin amid concerns about the risks posed by the emerging asset class, the head of the SEC said on Tuesday. With housing prices continuing to climb in many larger cities across the U.S., having a full-time job is no longer a guarantee that workers can afford to live in the city where they're employed. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, renters need to earn a wage of at least $21.21 per hour to afford a modest two-bedroom rental home in the U.S. With a federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour and an average hourly wage of $16.38 for renters nationwide, housing is simply unaffordable for many lower-income workers. The Dow Jones closed today at 24,893. Gold closed at $13.20 per ounce, and silver priced in at $18.66 an ounce. This has been Attorney Robert Ozeron with the Workers' Comp Matters Financial Report for the week of February 7th, 2018.
Thank you very much, my boy. And now I'd like to introduce the best-dressed man in workers' compensation with the Autonomous Car Report, Mr. Ted Durden.
Thank you, Steve, and as always, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. A San Francisco startup completed a coast-to-coast test drive of its autonomous semi-truck, the company announced on Tuesday. It drove from Los Angeles to Jacksonville, Florida, in the test drive covering around 2,400 miles without relying on a human driver on the freeway. According to co-founder and CEO Alex Rodriguez, Embark has already integrated a self-driving system into 5 trucks. It doesn't manufacture its own vehicles, but instead created a self-driving system that can be integrated into Peterbilt and other vehicles. Embark plans to acquire 40 more semis within the year for further testing and long-haul deliveries.
Thank you very much. Now, as most of you know, and who were listening last week, I announced that I remembered about 40 years ago on Saturday Night Live when they offered the Beatles $3,000 to come on the show. Now, as it so happens, the Beatles never came all together, but once in a while, I think Paul came and Ringo came and George Harrison came. But in one fashion or another, they came. And I said, well, if Saturday Night Live can offer the Beatles $3,000, I can offer Anna Montez some money in advertising to come on the show. So $3,000 divided by 4, that's $750 for Paul, $750 for George, and $750 for Ringo and John. And with inflation, that's a nice chunk of change. So I'm putting an official offer out there. If Anna Montez wants to come on the show, I will pay her or a favorite charity in advertising $750. My name is Steve Appel, and you're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by Santa Monica Tickets and A1 Law. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, $1 a day, A1 Law. And if you want those hard-to-get front-row sold-out concert, sports, or theater tickets, give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587.
Space Exploration Technologies Corp., SpaceX, successfully launched the Falcon Heavy rocket Tuesday on its initial test flight, marking another coup for founder Elon Musk. The blastoff from Florida's Kennedy Space Center was closely followed by the global aerospace industry, and it capped multiple design changes, years of delays, and a roughly $1 billion investment by SpaceX, as the company is commonly called. The 230-foot rocket, which featured 27 engines with the combined thrust of some 18 Boeing 747 jumbo jets, carried a Tesla Roadster as a dummy payload and publicity stunt.
Power lines buffeted by heavy winds caused at least 2 fires October 8th of last year in Northern California that eventually became the deadliest and most destructive wildfires in the history of California. The findings by the Santa Rosa Fire Department are the first public records that confirm what caused some of the fires that occurred that night, destroying in total 6,200 homes and killing 40 people. It was determined that the fire damage to the site was a direct result of the high winds causing the power lines to arc, starting a fire in the combustible vegetation. Fire Marshal Scott Moon wrote in his narrative statement about the Brush Creek blaze. More than 100 lawsuits filed by displaced residents are pending before a San Francisco judge, which claimed that PG&E failed to maintain and repair its power lines. Insurance claims from the Northern California fires have grown to an excess of $10 billion, with the largest share of the losses in Sonoma County, where 5,130 homes burned and 24 people were killed.
Uber was either a cheating competitor willing to break the law to win a race to develop self-driving cars, or the victim of an unproven conspiracy theory stitched together by its main rival, Waymo. Jurors heard in opening statements of trade secrets trial Monday. The case hinges on whether ride-hailing firm Uber used apparent trade secrets to advance its autonomous vehicle program. Waymo's allegation is that its former engineer, Anthony Lewandowski, downloaded more than 14,000 confidential files in December of 2015 containing designs for autonomous vehicles before going to work for Uber and its leading self-driving unit in 2016. Waymo and Uber are part of a crowded field of automakers and technology companies competing to build fleets of self-driving cars that could transform urban transportation systems.
And of course, Waymo is a subdivision of Google. And Ted, you've got the next story.
Yes. California officials announced this week that they will take a detailed look at the possibility of creating a taxpayer-backed bank to handle what could be billions of dollars of revenue generated by the state's legal marijuana industry. State Treasurer John Chang stopped short of endorsing the idea, but said his office would work with the state attorney general to examine how a weed bank might function for California's emerging pot economy, estimated to grow to $7 billion. Legal pot sales kicked off in California January 1st. However, many banks don't want anything to do with pot money for fear it could expose them to legal trouble from the federal government, which still lists marijuana as illegal.
Yeah. For this situation to change, eventually the federal government is going to have to legalize marijuana. I've said on the show many times that is going to be within 3 to 5 years. Excuse me. And before that can happen, unless there's a Supreme Court case, the marijuana will have to be reduced in classification from a Schedule I narcotic with no medical efficacy whatsoever. It's listed as dangerous as cocaine and heroin and magic mushrooms, and it'll have to go down to something that does have medical efficacy, because it does.
Here's what I'm curious about. I would imagine they're talking to maybe officials, or in Colorado, they've been able to do it, so I'd be curious to how their banking industry in Colorado are handling these sort of concerns.
Mary Kay Cosmetics or something. I mean, a lot of these dispensaries, they don't list themselves on credit cards and official financial statements as ABC Marijuana Dispensary. They're listed as like Green Cross Health Providers or something like that.
Yeah, something very generic and benign.
Yes, exactly correct. Mike knows. He was at the dispensary just earlier today, right, Mike?
I wasn't.
Has anyone actually walked in off the street in the dispensary at this table?
Yes, I have.
You have? Okay.
Absolutely. What would you like to know, my son?
Can you walk in right off the street?
If you're licensed.
You still have to have a license?
Oh, wait. You're talking about the
buyer.
No. Are you talking about a medical dispensary or the now recreational dispensary?
Well, I mean,
I have not been to a recreational dispensary. I've been to a medical dispensary.
I thought most recreational dispensaries were the trunk of a car. No? I got that wrong?
No, they.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, okay.
There's still that too.
It's just a little strange. I don't think anyone at this table, and myself included, has walked from the street into a marijuana dispensary now that it's legal. I don't even know where. I presume you could, though.
Well, dispensaries are popping up all over the place, but getting the appropriate license for their actual operation is the huge issue. We've got more talk, more news, and hopefully some answers, and we'll be back after a musical break.
Well, you can't turn him into a company man. You can't turn him into a whore. And the boys upstairs just don't understand anymore. Well, the top brass don't like him talking so much, and he won't play what they say to play. And he don't wanna change what don't need to change. And there goes the last DJ who plays what he wants to play and says what he wants to say. Hey, hey, hey. And there goes your freedom of choice. There goes the last human voice. And there goes the last DJ. Well, some folks say they're gonna hang him so high, 'cause you just can't do what he did. There's some things you just can't put in the minds of those kids. As we celebrate mediocrity, all the boys upstairs wanna see how much you'll pay for what you used to get for free. And there goes the last DJ who plays what he wants to play and says what he wants to say. Hey, hey, hey. And there goes your freedom of choice. And there goes the last human voice. And there goes the last DJ. Down in Mexico, and sometimes it'll kinda come in, and I'll bust a move and remember how it was back then. And there goes the last DJ who plays what he wants to play and says what he wants to say. Hey, hey, hey. And there goes your freedom of choice. There goes the last human voice. And there goes the last DJ.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on Work Comp Matters. As I've said before, he was in my life for 40 years and then unfortunately passed away recently. It was determined by accidental overdose prescription medication. My name is Steve Appel, and you're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by A1 Law and Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more California workers' compensation attorneys than any other system on the planet, give me a call at 818-357-4120. And if you want your hard-to-get, sold-out front row concert, sports, theater tickets, give Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. Also, I just remembered special notice memo from my son Nick, who's putting the shows on YouTube and the iTunes and YouTube. If you like the shows, please subscribe. And if you don't like the shows, please subscribe. And that's all I have to say about that. Well, he's my right-hand man. He keeps me in check and out of trouble about 99% of the time with his take on the memo, Mr. Mike Zyma.
I have long suspected monkey business on the part of the Clinton machine during the last presidential election. I've long suspected that yes people surrounding the Clinton machine engaged in monkey business on behalf of the Clinton machine. I believe that at the very least, the FBI knowingly used Clinton opposition research to get and renew a FISA warrant. Did the Trump machine engage in monkey business? My understanding is that is what Robert Mueller's Russia investigation is all about. Will the memo result in a Clinton investigation? Perhaps. It is possible that some of Mueller's folks are already looking into the Clinton angle. Of course, the Democratic response should be released. By the time of the airing of this podcast, the Dem response memo may already have been released. I expect the response memo to allege sources other than those funded by the Clinton machine. Of course, the information in the Republican memo does not vindicate Trump. However, from what is currently publicly known, I believe the Mueller investigation would not have been initiated without the information from entities connected to the Clinton machine. Let Mueller complete his work on Trump, then let's see if Mueller does anything with the latest Clinton monkey business. This will likely be a follow-the-money kind of deal. We've been there before. This whole thing is far from over. By the time Mueller has completed his work, noted for history will be a roster of scallywags and miscreants on both sides.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, Clinton is done. I mean, she may go on. She's still on her book thing. She's still asking what happened. You lost. She is done. She is over, and nothing good will come out of this for her. As far as Trump, he's in 1 year. The question is he going to be impeached before a 4-year term? I've said that he will survive 4 years, but they are throwing everything at him that they can. He was elected when the entire Democratic Party and most, if not all, of the Republican Party were against him. He gets elected. Now you've still got the entire Democratic Party against him. They're using everything in their arsenal, and they haven't been able to take him down yet. I heard, by the way, just as I was coming over, I didn't have the time to write it, that his secretary or whatever just resigned or is planning on resigning officially shortly because of sexual harassment allegations.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. Even though it's Kelly, John Kelly does not want him to resign, but the secretary is Bob. And yes, he's going to resign, but he's
Bob
disputed.
Porter?
Yeah, Bob Porter. He's disputed the allegations.
He's disputed it, but he's resigning anyways.
Correct.
Mike, you've got the next news story.
Only about a quarter of U.S. railroad tracks that carry passenger trains have an anti-crash system known as a positive train control. PTC is in operation on only 45% of tracks owned by freight railroads and 24% of tracks owned by passenger railways, according to the Federal Railroad Administration. Amtrak, the government-owned passenger rail carrier, has PTC on about two-thirds of its own tracks, but many of its trains travel on tracks owned by other operators. The pace at which railroads have installed PTC has come under increasing scrutiny after a series of crashes involving U.S. passenger trains in recent years, and indeed within the last couple of weeks.
I'd be afraid to take a railroad right now, or a train right now.
You know, twice we went all the way from L.A. to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it was 2 1/3 days, and so we were on the train. And it's a hootenanny to get a sleeper
If you get
car.
a sleeper, yeah.
Yeah,
right,
it's a hootenanny, but there were many times when I'm sitting there and I'm hearing it go, you know, and I just had to forget about it and just take it easy. But it's fun, but they might have to stand down for safety reasons. That would be extraordinary.
Robert, you've got probably the last news story.
All right. Well, estimated future drug costs are the main reason that Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, also known as CMS, are requiring increases in Medicare set-aside amounts, or MSAs, according to a report from the National Council on Compensation Insurance released Monday. According to the report, CMS usually requires larger percentage increases to Medicare set-asides when the submission amounts are smaller. The gap between approved and submitted MSAs was steady from 2013 to 2015, mainly due to the decrease between approved and submitted prescription drug amounts. About 64% of claimants are eligible for Medicare because they have been on Social Security disability for at least 2 years, and another 29% of claimants are eligible due to age. However, Medicare set-asides represent more than 40% of total workers' compensation settlement costs, the NCCI said in the report.
Thank you, Robert. Well, that's the end of the Work Comp Matters news. We've had all the segments. How's everybody's week going so far? Anything worth mentioning? I hear crickets. Everybody must be doing some confidential stuff for the FISA court, I see. Right?
Yeah,
Can't talk about it.
Yeah, we're afraid it'll show up in a memo.
We're gagged.
Yeah. And in fact, John before has spoken about getting his FBI file, right? And they've refused to give it to him.
Yes.
And John is the first one to say that this is nothing, that the memo is nothing. It's no big deal. Like I said, in my opinion, it's a huge deal, but it's been going on for so long. And like we did the Alan Shore from Boston Legal at the start, the American public is okay with it. You know?
Right.
I would assume that the FBI has a file on an American living in another country who's, a socialist, as he proclaims.
He's a socialist, yes.
Yeah, I could see the American government wanting to keep tabs on him. Not that
I think this is old stuff under Hoover.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what John's FBI file says.
I don't know. You want to help him get it?
Wow. I thought he already had it. I just asked him to email it over to me.
No, he wants it. They've refused to give it to him.
Well, they've acknowledged that they have one then by doing that, right?
That's what I want to add. And in fact, John, I know you're listening. Have you confirmed that the FBI indeed does have a file on you?
Yeah, maybe they have a file on all of us, right? Mine is 1 page thick saying,
It wouldn't surprise me if they had a file on me for various reasons, but the number one being is that we've done 52 shows last week. This is last year. This is show number 6. So I've got about 58 shows also with my name that have gone out onto the internet all over the place. I've probably been investigated, but
Don't you think that's wishful thinking? Don't you feel like your ego is kind of just... maybe there's an FBI agent who's interested in workers' comp and is listening, but
you're
that might be the
welcome to
extent.
come on the show, pal. I'd love to ask you whatever you're at liberty to talk about.
Okay, we would love the FBI agent who is monitoring the show to come on as a guest. We would love to have you. Steve wants to know what's in his file. If you could bring John's file as well, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Actually, speaking of government access, so to speak, I was actually considering a run as the assemblyman for the 45th Congressional District, the one that Dan Dabinaw retired from.
Isn't that a state position?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It is a state assemblyman, the state assembly, the 45th District. Dan Dabinaw, probably pronouncing it wrong. He resigned because of sexual harassment allegations. You've got one Republican that's running. You have about 7 Democrats that are running. And then you have Dennis Zines, who's running as an independent. He's a former Republican councilman, and he's running as an independent for the seat. I live in the 45th Assembly District. It's basically the San Fernando Valley from east to west. It covers it covers the western half of the San Fernando Valley. And I thought for kicks, maybe a little free advertising or whatnot, I would run, but I decided against it. It would take too much time, and if I didn't have an FBI file now, I'd probably have one after I ran.
Well, I was thinking
office.
if you were going to run, do it right. You'd have to get a campaign manager and raise funds and yada yada yada.
What's the pay?
The pay is $104,000 a year plus $175 a day stipend for every day that you're up in Sacramento. And I suspect that of course, the $104,000 a year is taxable, but I suspect that the $175 a day is probably not taxable income because it's a stipend for costs and expenses.
Does that have to include the hotel room?
I think if you want to pay for a hotel room, you pay for it. That's to keep your apartment there or do whatever.
Well, it is $175 a day. I guess
$175 a day.
All right, that's not bad.
You want a hotel room, you want to rent an apartment, you want one of your concubines to shack up with, that's okay,
Hey, I'm going to put that right on the IRS deduction, housing for concubine. We'll see how that'll work on my audit.
Or if there are any 18-year-old babes that have been displaced because of fires in Northern California, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know what, boss? Maybe it's best you didn't run. These sexual harassment allegations are coming out fast and furious here. It probably wouldn't take too long.
I have openly said that my sexual harassment allegation about me saying you've seen one pussy, you've seen them all, I've openly admitted to that, and of course it happened, 15, 20 years ago.
Well, it's time to find out if the American people forgive you.
Okay, all right. So there you have it. We've unfortunately come to the end of another edition of Work Comp Matters. It's been a pleasure to work with these fine gentlemen. Mr. Mike Zyma, who keeps me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time. The best-dressed man in California workers' compensation, Mr. Ted Durden. My protege, Attorney Robert Ozeron. Scott from Uncle's on the board. Attorney John Scalia back in Munich, who's skiing or whatever right now. All of the good people back at Work Comp Central who continue to support and approve of this project, including but not limited to Leaf, File, and Jake Paris. My name is Steve Appel. We'll see you again next week for another edition of Work Comp Matters.